like to now invite Robin up to introduce our speaker.
Okay, so normally at our speaker nights, the speaker is introduced by our wonderful Swapna. But tonight I asked for special permission to introduce our speaker because we met in a kind of unusual way. And I wanted to share that story because it will give you a sense of the superhuman awesomeness of Dr. Tait and how lucky we are that she's able to find some time to hang out with us tonight and update us on what she's been up to over the past year. So the story of how we met is this. I play ladies ice hockey. And a few years ago was the start of a new season, and I showed up at the first game to meet my new teammates. And we're all sharing what we do. And I mentioned that I'm an astronomy prof, and one of my teammates said, "Oh, you must know Kim Tait. She also works in space." And said she's also on this team, but she can't make the game tonight. And so I was like, cool, I don't know her, but really looking forward to meeting her. So next game, I show up early. There's one other person in the dressing room who I don't know. We introduce ourselves. It turns out to be Dr. Tait. And I say, "Oh, I hear you're in the astronomy field as well." And Kim says, "Oh, I'm just a curator at the ROM. I work with rocks and minerals." And I said, "Well, that's weird because our teammate was sure that you're involved in spacey stuff." And Kim said, said probably she thought that because sometimes I work with moon rocks. And so it's kind of disappointed, but I say, "Okay, well, that sounds kind of interesting." And then she says, "Or maybe it's because NASA sometimes flies me to classified locations to consult on sample return missions." And so then I was like, I think we know who the real astronomer on this team actually is. So then other ladies have come into the dressing room at this point, and we all start talking about our hockey playing kids. And I have a son, he's a goalie, and I often share stories about like what a crazy emotional roller coaster that is. And so as I'm listening to the conversation, I gradually realize that everyone in that room has a kid who has played hockey with one of Kim's kids. And so finally I ask Kim, "How many kids do you have?" And she says, "Oh, just 5. And including 2 sets of twins, and 4 of them are goalies." So keep all of that context in your head as I now give you Kim's official introduction. Okay, sorry. Dr. Kim Tait is the senior curator of mineralogy at the Royal Ontario Museum, where she oversees all the collections and research programs related to meteorite, gem, mineral, and petrology. She's also a professor in the Department of Earth Sciences at the University of Toronto. Dr. Tait leads a research program employing diffraction and spectroscopy to characterize various terrestrial and extraterrestrial minerals at both ambient and extreme conditions. She's a member of the Mars Sample Return Campaign Group, a joint NASA-ESA group, which is planning for the return of Mars samples in the 2030s. And she's also a co-investigator on NASA's OSIRUS-REX asteroid sample return mission. And if all of that isn't enough to impress you, she also plays a very solid right wing.
Oh, that was quite an introduction. So I got something to live up to. So yes, well, thank you very much for having me out this evening. You must not be hockey fans because there's an important game going on tonight, or if there's any updates throughout the evening that you want to share with me while I'm speaking, that'd be great. I was born in Edmonton, so very excited about tonight. So
thanks for coming out.
Yeah, no pressure. So yes, thank you. So as mentioned, I'm curator at the ROM, and I take care of 4 collections there. How many people have been to the ROM? Much about it. Yeah, so take care of 4 collections. So if you want to hold Tiara, come to the museum, I'm the person. We're a very small little group. There's only 3 of us that take care of the earth science collections and only 1 curator. So I do my best. I have a really fun job that I get to not only work at the ROM, but cross-appointed at the University of Toronto. So I can teach and have grad students and fight for funding just like every other professor does. most of you have been there, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But what people don't really realize is the strong connection. Maybe most people do. I don't know. It seems like people are surprised about this, but the strong connection between the University of Toronto and the ROM, physically they're right there. But, up until the 1960s, they're one and the same. And then 1968, they broke apart. But most of the curators at the museum still have full appointments to the University of Toronto. And it's really a great a very unique relationship. I'm finding out more and more as I go through my career that, it's a really important connection, I think. And, we wound up renovating our collection space down in the third basement of the museum. So I'm highly vitamin D deficient. My office is actually below the subway. So it rumbles above me as it goes by. So some days I don't see the sun at all. I just kind of go down and then I come up and it's still dark, and that's what it is. But yeah, we have this great connection, and what that does is that we're able to bring students from U of T over and have a really immersive experience for them. It's hard sometimes for me to take my collections with me because either they're highly valuable, they're heavy. That's probably more half the reason is sometimes it's too heavy. So we invite the student to the ROM, and we renovated our collection space and actually built a learning lab right into our collection space so that people can touch and be immersed. So we'll have to invite you guys there sometime to come see it. So, yeah. So I have, one great part of my job is I do a lot of science communication. These are just some little snippets of some of the things I get to do. I find this photo on the bottom left kind of the most funny. We had bought Springwater Palisite. So it's a very large palisite that fell in Saskatchewan. And we put it out there to the media that we would be cutting it open for the first time and invited, everybody out. And it must have been a slow news day or something, because our media person came running down the stairs and she's like, there's 65 news outlets coming today. And she's panicked and sweating. And so anyways, we wound up opening the meteorite for the first time, and you see all of the interest in that. So I think it's a real honor to have this kind of position, because not only do I get to spend taxpayers' dollars on samples, but actually getting to share the excitement about space and space rocks to the general public too. So I even made it on a French channel show. I don't know what I said because I don't speak French whatsoever, but that's me in the top right there. So the meteorite collection at the ROM sort of started out at the beginning. There was a couple samples that came over from the University of Toronto at the very, very beginning. And we had sort of modest additions, sort of less than 10 a year, all the way up into the 1990s. And what happened sort of 1995 was that we got to meet a wonderful meteorite donor. His name is David Gregory. And he came to the ROM as a small child and got really excited about space. A docent was there and said, if you could pick up this meteorite and you can have it. And of course, it weighed 4 times his weight, and there was no chance of him actually getting it out the door. But that first touch, the first time holding, touching and feeling a meteorite really got him intrigued in space. And that's, what everybody does in this room when you're speaking to the public and speaking to small children, you just don't know how that's going to resonate with them, right? So he went out, became a physician, made some money, and came back to the ROM as an adult and said, I have some space rocks. Would you like them? And we're like, yes, we would like your space rocks. And that began a long relationship with him. Unfortunately, he has passed away, but we are now working with his family. And what we do is every year we do, because the way that the ROM is set up, we could actually offer tax receipts for the values of the meteorites. So every year we sort of do a tax deal. They give us samples, we give a tax receipt. So it's a win-win. And really it's a win for all of us, because we're getting more and more space rocks that are available for people to look at, to hold, to touch. and to study. So that's when we met our donor, and I like to brag because that's when I arrived. So you can see that, you know, but I was very interested in it, and I worked with the donor very, very closely, and now with the Gregory family. Turns out that Dr. Gregory was a little bit of a hoarder. We actually are still finding, his poor family are finding meteorites all over North America. He had storage lockers upon storage lockers of things, like thousands and thousands and thousands of meteorites that the poor family is still trying to hunt down. They actually have a full house of meteorites that they don't know what to do with right now. So I think I'm gonna try to help him with his problem and get them to the ROM. So yeah, so if anybody knows any rich people, let me know. So you definitely want to make sure that this stays in Toronto. So I am speaking to the converted here. I don't think I'm gonna spend too long on this, but you know, rocks from space, a lot of them are in the asteroid belt, and they do make their way to Earth, which is fantastic. That's what we want. You know, obviously most of them fall into the ocean and into water, into the north. You know, I've been on, how many people have been on a meteorite search before? Is anybody? Oh, well, there's one. There was a very hesitant finger though. So what did you search for? Okay, yeah, that's okay. Did you find anything? Yeah, okay, that's great. I've been on a couple meteorite searches now, and it's actually a lot harder than you expect. Even when you know that it landed in a certain region, you know, you can be almost on top of them, and they're so hard to find. So we're really, really lucky to be able to get some of this material. Most of them are found in the Sahara. It's not because they fall there any more preferentially, it's just that they stand out. So it's a black rock on a sandy surface. A lot of them come from Antarctica. And again, it's white snow, no trees. North America is only about 3.5%. And yeah, I'd like to obviously up that a little bit more, but it is very tricky, especially even in a farmer's field. It's incredibly tricky to find them. So we do have a lot of trees and a lot of stuff to find. So yeah, this number has gone up since the last time I used this slide, so I apologize. But yeah, about 500 each year, only about 10 are recovered. You know, that obviously varies from year to year. But yeah, this is a slide I like to use, is just because people think that they always just land in, you appreciate the slide, they land everywhere. There's no preference for day or night, there's no preference for location, they're landing everywhere. So that's just a distribution of how they land. So we're going to get to what I'm actually here for, is to talk a little bit about the OSIRUS-REX mission. I feel like this is a pretty knowledgeable group. So most of you have heard of this mission before. This, you know, it's actually, when I give this lecture, many people haven't even heard of it. So I kind of have to do a lot more reference, so like sort of the early stuff. But basically, this is a mission. I was lucky enough to go down to the launch. I brought my 5 children along with me, and I was like, who wants to, you know, work on space missions? And my 2 boys are like, I want to go into space. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Totally backfired on me. So, so hopefully, they do not do that, but we'll see. So yeah, the idea was to bring material from Bennu back to Earth, and that has been accomplished now. So we're really, really excited. As everybody probably knows in this room, that Canada did contribute an instrument called OLA. It turned out to be a very important instrument, probably more important than they actually even thought when it was sent out. And I've been part of the science team since 2017, and then at 2022 I was promoted, I guess, to co-investigator for the mission, for the sample team for OLA. So I'll talk a little bit more later about some of the other roles that I have, but that's how this all started out. So, you know, I have to put this in because I think most people here would understand why we do this, but just in case there's somebody here thinks, you know, we shouldn't be spending this money. You know, the asteroids, especially Bennu, is a carbonaceous meteorite. It's full of carbon, and it's likely sort of it's like a time capsule of what was happening 4.56 billion years ago. What's interesting about Bennu specifically, besides there's a lot of water on it, and you know, maybe there's potential for seeds of life, etc. So I took NASA training, media training, and they're like, do not scare the public. That was like that kept saying that over and over again. So I have to be very careful. But there is a very, very small chance that it could hit Earth in the 2186 or whatever it is. So for us to understand, you know, rocks that are out there and potential hazards to our planet is always good. But I don't do planetary protection, so I'm more interested in the actual rocks. So you know, we're so lucky. I think everybody knows about Tagish Lake, but we have a wonderful meteorite that landed here in Canada. I can talk more about the story if anybody wants to hear in the discussion after the break, that nobody's allowed to ask me questions about anything during the break. I've been told. So actually had a PhD student, Mike Daly from York, and I do co-supervise a lot of students. We like to work together because he's the sort of engineer and wants to build things, and I'm the scientist that has rocks, and he has to test his instruments with rocks. And so we seem to have a really good working relationship together. And so we had a student, her name was Beth Limer, and she worked on sort of the nanoglobules. That's still ongoing. She's graduated, got a job of all things. Keep getting these students they go and get jobs and then they go away, so we have to start again. So that's a good problem. It's a good problem. That's what we want. So but we do have this meteorite at the ROM. We do have a piece on display. It's up there on the top right. It literally is like a charcoal briquette. You could crush it in your hands. Its weight changes throughout the year. Right now it probably weighs most because it picks up all the humidity and then it lets it all go in the winter and picks it all up again. So it's a very interesting rock. It has all sorts of stories, but I am very interested in studying the sample. And it turns out that it is actually the most close so far sample that we have to Bennu. So leading up to the sample coming back, we spent a lot of time, you know, teaching students how to study it, working on, you know, sample procedures. How to we just published a paper about 8 months ago now about how to prepare the sample, because it's, again, you know, charcoal briquettes, you know, how do you cut it? How do you fracture it? How do you polish it? All these things. We wound up ruining a lot of, not Tagish, but of serpentines and earth rocks to get to the right method of preparing the samples. So I can show you pictures of that later if you want. So Bennu, I altered this American figure to show the relationship to the CN Tower. So it's about the height of the CN Tower for size, and it was picked. I think I have a slide about that. Why it was picked? Yeah, it's you know, there's over 500,000 asteroids. There's a lot of them that are near Earth, or could potentially unlikely hit Earth at some point. You know, its carbon rich was really exciting, but that diameter of over 200 meters is really important just for trying to land a the tag SAM onto it, or else it'd be spinning too fast to get it. And we wanted something that's kind of close so that we could send it and get it back within our career lifespan, which is great. So that's how we got to Bennu. I already talked about that. So what I like about this project is that it's a lot of different institutions, not only here in British Columbia, if anybody's listening online, which is great, but you know, we have colleagues from all over Canada and then all over the United States as well that have been working on this project, and we meet quite regularly still. So that's what it stands for. I'm not going to read that out to you because that's going to take 5 minutes, but just in case somebody wants to see. And if you want to fall asleep now or start watching the highlights of the game, I completely understand. But if you just want you to see this, you know, make sure that, you know, what's really great about this is it's Canada's first time being part of a sample return mission. And, you know, we were a big contributor. We as a country, I nothing to do with it, but you know, MDA and all of the scientists, you know, Canada actually had a really big part in this, so it's really exciting. People ask me why was the name Bennu. It was this lovely gentleman here that was able to name it, and he named it as such because he felt that the instrument with its tag SAM arm out looks like Bennu, which is a Greek bird. I'm not sure what kind of bird it is, but that is the reasoning for its name. What's that? Egyptian, yeah. Sure. Egyptian.
Let's go with that.
Let's go with that. So that's Ola there on the instrument, and that's the sample return container there. And LiDAR is really interesting because all it is it's a pulse that goes to the surface, and then the time that it takes for it to hit the surface and come back, it just measures, and it's just over and over and over again. And that's how they were able to investigate the surface of Bennu. When they got there, they realized it was a lot more irregular than they expected. You know, I think some of the initial thoughts were there's going to be a lot of places to land. It's going to be really smooth. There might be a couple rocks here and there. Got there, it was completely a mess. So that's why Ola became a lot more important, because they needed to find a really safe place for the tag SAM head to land, not land, to touch. So you can see here they were able to touch down. I have a better video of that in a second, but the idea was that they wanted to collect at least 60 grams of Bennu. So 60 grams is like a candy bar kind of size, and the hope kind of on the other end was up to 2 kilograms. And I really think they would have been closer to that, except there was a very strong rock that got stuck in the mylar flap as they pulled back. And they actually had a video of the rocks escaping out into space, and they couldn't get that mylar flap closed. So we did lose some material, but as I'll show in a few minutes, that's okay. Do you have a question, Brady? Okay, you can ask me anything.
No.
Okay, you're good. Okay, and some people also ask a lot of times, how close did OSIRUS-REX spacecraft get to Earth? I found this is a really handy slide for me. You know, you can see the International Space Station, you can see, you know, normal commercial airliners, and then spacecraft got to about 10,711 miles away. Very American, sorry. I should try to convert that. But yeah, it was sort of medium Earth orbit before it took off for its next adventure. I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is the last image of it as it escaped and went away. You can see Earth's little right here. That's Earth there. And that was sort of its last look as it was released on September 24th. I tried as much as I could to get to Utah for this landing. I was not successful. Mike Daly got to go, so, so that's okay. That's okay. So I went straight to Houston, and so I was there for arrival of the sample, but I actually was at a hockey rink. It's crazy enough, I know, when this all went down, and you know, everything went fairly well. I was watching and listening while my kids were playing hockey, and I was, you know, cheering at them. And the countdown didn't quite make sense. They were still counting. It had already landed. Does anybody know this story or heard? It's been pretty quiet about what happened because NASA never likes to admit there was a bit of an issue. But in the landing sequence, there's a series of there was 2 parachutes that are supposed to there's a big one, you know, there's
a drone chute.
the drogue chute. The drogue chute was supposed to go first, and then there's another chute that comes out.
The main.
Right. I don't know these words. There was a big chute and a little chute. And yeah, so they wound up being deployed at the exact same time, and that's not supposed to happen. So if you watch the video, it is swinging a lot more than it probably should be, and it landed sooner than it should have. So harder, sooner. So there was a little bit of confusion and concern, I think, at this point. Of course, there was the crew. I don't know if anybody was actually watching that day, but you could hear them. Oh, there's a lot of commotion. Oh, and they started talking about something else, right? Like let's talk about, you know, the weather or something. Like they completely changed the subject, but it did land. It landed perfectly. Actually, it landed. There's a road that is just off the screen here, but it landed by a road. It landed straight up. There's the parachute off to the side. Everything went really to plan. So that is great. And this is the crew that was able to go out and observe the craft there at the first. So that's the PI, Dante Loretta, who's wearing his University of Arizona hat. So Wildcats. And Francis McCubbin is from NASA Johnson Space Center, and they were able to go out there and take the sort of the first measurements. So Francis was there to collect some of the sand and some of the materials for sort of, you know, to characterize and to collect. And then, you know, Dante was there and he put some flags around it to sort of document where it landed. It landed at the Utah Test and Training Range. So there was quite a lot of security to get in there, which is why random Canadians couldn't come. I tried a couple different ways through my Canadian connections with the CSA, and then that didn't work. So I tried to go through, I'm actually a member of MAPWAG, which is the Meteoric and Mineral and Planet and Petrographic Working Groups. So I try to go there as a spokesperson for MAPWAG, but nobody bit. So that's okay. That's okay. So it landed. I went into a clean room there on site, and they were able to sort of take off the sort of the first onion shell there. They, you know, made some first observations. Everything seemed to be okay. So they loaded it up into a large plane and flew it to Houston. I think that was the next day, if I recall, because yeah, there was press that evening, sleep. Then they loaded up on the plane and flew to Houston. So I was in Houston waiting. So this is, I actually got a NASA badge, which is super cool. They haven't given those out in a long time to foreign nationals. So I keep getting stopped at the gate every time. They're like, let me see that. I've never seen that. They're like going through their book, trying to figure out what this color of badge is that this person has shown up with. So I have that still, which is great. And so there was myself and Carolyn Morissette, Mike Daly, Tim Hultigan, 4 Canadians on site. Yep. So we were there. This very boring looking rental truck showed up, and that was on purpose. I guess they don't want to have NASA on the side, right? Like, so they just had this this truck, and that's it coming off. So I'm standing here. This is Dante looking very stressed and concerned, watching it, making sure that everybody's doing their jobs, I guess, correctly, which is great. And what's actually fun is that Michelle Thompson, she's the redhead there just behind him. She was actually my first student ever. So she came to the ROM back in 2008 as my first summer student. I got a call from Ron Peterson, a professor at Queen's, and he said, you have to take this student. I'm like I was just brand new curator, and I was like, okay, if you say so, because he, he knows what he's doing. He was a very popular professor and well known. So she came to the ROM as she was a third year student at that time, second year student. So very, very new to mineralogy. And so we had her working on a meteorite sample for the summer. She went away in her third year and went to the Lunar Planetary Institute, where she worked on space weathering, and that's still actually what she works on now. And fourth year came back to the ROM and worked on the same sample, and we were actually able to publish her work. And then she had all this excellent experience with planetary work, so she went and did her PhD at the University of Arizona, and now she's a professor at Purdue. So it's fun to see, all the you actually send them out in the world, and they do things, which is great. So she's very involved with the mission from her new role, Purdue, but she has those connections with the University of Arizona as well. So sidebar, but it came into the clean room. This is at Johnson Space Center now in the clean room area, and that is the first. So you can see there's two glove boxes, right? So there's this one here. This is where it's going to be pristine and clean. So this is the sort of the first stage, the first step. And so they were able to take one more kind of onion shell off and got the sample into that container. And once they opened it up, they're able to see black material that was on it. So they knew that there was something in there, which is great. And this is Dante's first sort of reaction, seeing it and facing out to the crowd that was there. He's got a cell phone, he's taking pictures, super excited. So I don't have my watch died. So I was looking at that clock on the wall.
Good luck. Yeah.
And I'm like,
Keep talking until it's 9 o'clock.
yeah.
It's important to.
Okay, thank you. Because you told me I could talk till I will keep going. So like I'll just keep going and going. So I just want to make sure. So this is what it looked like. This is the first images. So there was a lot more dust on the avionics deck than they expected. So they had to do a lot of containerizing is what they call it, of all of the material that snuck out, which is good. So what Canada gets is we get 4% of the material that is collected, which is fantastic. We also get a contact pad, so you can't see them here. I'll show that in the next page, but that's what we'll be getting here in Canada. So this is September 28th. It was really important to the team to get material into laboratories as fast as possible. So they took some of that material that was on the avionics deck and got it out to scientists. This is the handoff from curation. That's Nicole there on the right to the PI. He's looking a lot more rested and happy and less stressed at this point because there's material to go out. So some of the first material went to the University of Arizona, as expected, and then some of it went to Carnegie to do isotopic work, and then some of it went to the Smithsonian. So those are sort of the first three bits that went out. As they kept going on, this also wasn't in the news a lot. So do you guys know this story? It was kind of, so there's some nods, but this was pretty quiet as well. So they've spent all this engineering time and money to send this fantastic probe out into the solar system, and it comes back, and they bring this material and they get it into this $1 million clean room, and then they get there and they try to open up and they can't undo a screw. And they're like, oh, so they tried and they tried, and I was still in Houston, and we'd have these updates at the end of the day, and they're like, they still can't get the screw open. And then it went to a media blackout. We couldn't talk about any progress anymore. So did you email Randy? There was somebody that was sort of like, what's happening? And I'm like, oh, I can't talk about that right now because nobody wants to talk about what's going on. So there was I had a couple of questions, a couple of asked, media was even asking, it was like, why is it so quiet? And anyway, so they're still like, they put out, we had a big press release. It was about 2 or 3 weeks after everything landed. And, there was a lot of material, thank God, that was on the outside. So they're able to collect some, you can see, this is the Mylar flap is in here. And so they actually, what they did is they wound up like pushing this down and reaching in and grabbing some stuff and pulling it out because they couldn't get in. They could not get into this thing. So they had to, all these engineers, all these, really smart people didn't remember to get, like, it's like an IKEA, like hex wrench. They couldn't get it in because it was a material. They actually didn't. It was so tight. There was probably like a really keen engineer was like, I cannot let this get like loose. So he probably just like really cranked on it. And so, yeah, so they had to pause work and they had to go back to the drawing board, and they came up with this crazy contraption because the problem is that there's all these requirements for materials that could go into the glove box. So they couldn't just get a bigger wrench. They couldn't just get a bigger whatever they need, a hacksaw or whatever, because none of those things are material compliant. So anyways, a couple weeks later, they were able to make this fancy tool. Why didn't they think of that before? It seems like that should have thought of that. But anyways, doesn't matter. They got in. So they got the lid off finally. This is the first kind of look into the different parts there, which is great. And then the idea was they put on this contraption here, and they flipped it. So they flipped it over, and it landed in a sort of this pie. I don't know why they did it this way, but that's another story. These pie shaped little trays here. And this is I guess a really nice close-up of one of the trays. And, I'm now back in Canada, but we have every day we're getting sort of new images and stuff. So you can see these really large pieces, you can see smaller pieces, some sort of little bits. You can see different colors, which was great. Very exciting. So in the end, there was 121.6 grams of material, more than double than the candy bar scenario. And it's the largest asteroid sample ever collected, which is fantastic. So, from here, again, they're now being sent out to laboratories, and all these fantastic images are coming back with different shapes. And, every time we meet almost about once a week still, about, new scientific finds, etc. And it's just more and more questions, I think, than answers, which is great. What we're seeing a lot of is these circular features here. These called nanoglobules. So they're carbon-rich balls. And if you think back to the slides I showed you before, Tagish Lake has a lot of those as well. So there's a lot of connections to the sample that we have here in Canada that NASA doesn't have. We have here in Canada, so they want it, a lot of it actually. So this is some of the early work that came out of Carnegie, and this was sort of is it the same as Ryugu? Is it the same as Tagish? And that was the big question everybody wants to know, and the early indications that it is not like either. So it is very similar, and it's in that range, but it does seem to be a little different than Tarta, Ryugu, and Tagish. So that's great. That means that there is, some variety, but, really, when we think about it, there aren't that many data points. So, how much do we understand about carbonaceous material is, I think, the bigger question. And, lots to learn, which is great. I think, yeah. So, the mission, luckily was extended. I think most of you know this, and it's on its way to Apophis, and now it's OSIRUS-Apex. And I get OSIRUS-Apex updates now instead of, sorry, Apophis updates now for its rendezvous in 2029. So I wasn't able to get a couple slides approved for today, which really annoyed me, but CSA and how they worked. So I could talk a little bit about what I've been doing with the CSA. Can't show you any pictures though, so bear with me. I've been brought on as so what I tried to do was get the sample to our 4% to Canada to the RAW. That was my first play. It was going pretty well until the lawyers got involved, and they're like, "How much does this thing cost to replace?" And we're like, "Well, there's billions, right?" So they didn't like that too much. So they wanted to keep it in headquarters. So we're building a clean room in Montreal for the sample. Did you not know that?
No.
I can't show any slides. Sucks. They don't want to talk about it. So that's where it goes. That's where it's going. So I've been brought on to sort of help them with that, which is great. And so I'm writing all of the handling procedures, all the loan document procedures, consulting on the clean room design. And we've been working on, we've built a like it's made out of wood glove box, and we practice on how to when we receive it, how we're going to bring it in, how it's going to come through the loading dock, etc. So all of these things are in progress. In typical government, unfortunately, it took a long time to get the agreements and funding released and procurement done, etc. So we're looking probably now at a sample coming to Canada next April, which is, I know, trust me, I know. You have to wait until after the snack time to ask me questions. So I'm going to just put it out there. So that was your rule.
Yeah.
So that is the situation right now, that even still may slip. So it is what it is, but there is sample available. It's a good bit. There's tons of great content out there. If you ever were talking about it, make sure you go on the OSIRUS-REX NASA page. They have a gazillion videos, lots of photos. The blog is really good for updates as things come out. And Dante loves to talk about his missions. So he actually has his own website too. So I would implore you to look at all those places. And after break, we can talk more. Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're
Is
gonna
there a
get it
weird
now.
one? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Go to you've got to do tax receipts from this gentleman.
Yes.
That's so generous.
Mhm.
And you've got to convince the CRA that what you're doing is legitimate.
Yep.
So what penny a pound, what are we talking about? How do we value the meteorites?
That's not a crazy question. That's what I do. So we get at least 2 arm's length appraisals of each meteorite that comes through. It wants to be donated, and more and more and more, we have to do provenance history of the samples as well. So we now have to find out as much as we can about which hands it's gone through, because as you guys have seen in the news, that there's a lot more scrutiny on meteorite samples, mostly, or samples in general, to museums. There's museums in the US that have had to give stuff back. So we want to make sure that our stuff is legally acquired, etc. So there's a lot of things that I have to do now to get samples which is good. I think it's the right thing to do. It's a lot more onus on us to prove that everything is acquired safely. But yeah, so we do 2 appraisals. We hope that they're somewhat close together. If they're not close together, if there's a wide range, which unfortunately, depends how you look at it. A lot of the meteorites we get are very rare. So there's not a lot of data points out there. So depending how they do their research, etc., the price range might vary. So we go to the Cultural Property CCPERB, Canadian Cultural Property Export and Review Board, and we put in a big proposal, and they review it, and sometimes make us get a third appraisal. If you guys have spare time in your hands, become meteorite appraisers, because I need more meteorite appraisers. I'm serious, like I'm dead serious. There's big money in that. You guys are really smart and know stuff things, so it would be a really good retirement thing to do, and I'd love that there'd be more in Canada. So just putting that out there in case there's anybody that would like to do that. So
Where did Dr. Gregory get out of these meteorites that has filled houses?
Yeah. that's a good question. He got interested, well, he was always interested, but he started purchasing right at the Northwest Africa sort of emergence. So he was right at the front door of that, and he made a bunch of connections with people that were sort of every time, even a gem, mineral, anything changes hands, it gets more and more expensive, as you know. So he was able to make connections with people either straight in those countries or one removed. And he was able to purchase at a good price. And as I mentioned to the last gentleman, we get 2 appraisals. It could be a lot more than what he paid for it. And so therefore, he would do quite well with his tax receipt. So that happened a couple times, and that gives him more money. So he's able to buy more things, and then on and on and on. So that's nitty-gritty of my job. Yes.
When you get a meteorite from Mars, say,
Yes.
is there any way of knowing how long it's been out there? It's so how well are they typically out there for a long time, or are any of them like relatively fresh?
That's a whole subsection of meteoritics that people study. So they do some tests on the meteorites for cosmic ray exposure. So how long they've been sort of out in space. They can measure. I don't do that, so I'm not even going to try to pretend to know about that, but they can measure that. And then what I do when the rocks are here is I really like to study how they were formed, when they were formed, and sort of come up with their history of crystallization, when they were knocked off the planet, etc. So that's some of the work that I do. So doing dating of the different minerals that are in the rocks. So we had a Nature paper in 2013 that was able to use some of the very small analytical tools that I have available, and we're able to date the primary crystal that was formed, and then there was some recrystallization, so we're able to date that, and that was the time that it was launched off the planet. So sort of the timeline of its work. So fine, front of the class, pick me. So yeah.
I'll sit at the back.
No, I'm just kidding.
One of your early slides had an N equals 53,000 some odd. That's the total number of meteors that have been recovered on Earth.
It's a lot higher than that. That's probably an old slide now.
But let's
yeah,
say
it's 60,000. Sure.
And so the
Yep.
meteorites that you buy
Mhm.
at a thing have been chipped off one of those 60,000, let's say, presume, or they're fakes, one of the other.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those. I receive many emails daily from samples that are not meteorites, but yeah, they can be either from a larger piece and either broken off or whatever, or they could be smaller bits that it blew up at lower orbit, and then they're just small bits of bigger ones.
So that's considered one
find.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a meteorite called NWA 869. I think its total weight is in the tons. So that was what came to mind when we were talking, because there's so much of it. There's only so many meteorite people out there. So David Gregory has donated, I think, in the range of 350 kilograms of material of this one meteorite. And so that's what I had that student, Michelle, I was talking about, the redhead. That's what I had her do that second year because she didn't have a meteorite background. So it made the poor girl measure and weigh every single bit of, we have hundreds and hundreds of that material. And so what she did in that first year, because she was, she made observations, right? She's like, this one looks a little different than the 300 ones I did before. So she kind of made notes of that and made, put that one aside and put that one aside and put that one aside. So when she came back in her fourth year, she took the ones that she found that were a little different and then actually studied them. So it was kind of a fun progression of her studies. So. Well, that wasn't bad. I was like expecting like, yeah.
Now she's reading the question. So
Yeah. B minus. Yeah.
The bigger question.
Okay.
So, how do you know a meteor has a certain composition? I can understand stars and things like that,
Okay.
but a meteor doesn't have atmosphere. So
Right.
how do you detect? How do you know Bennu has carbon?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm a mineralogist. That's my background. So maybe you're setting me up for this. I don't know. So, so I study, so my background actually is minerals and I knew nothing about meteorites. I never had it in school, a class or anything, which is problematic. So when I arrived at the ROM in 2007, they're like, you're in charge of meteorite collection. I'm like, so, it was all on the job learning. But what I found out pretty early on, there's a bunch of weird names that, some lexicon I had to learn. But at the end of the day, rocks from space and rocks from Earth are exactly the same stuff, right? The same minerals that are in each of the rocks. So I use the same analytical tools that I study rocks on Earth. I use the same measurements, same everything and we study them that way. So some of the isotopic, those measurements that were made by Carnegie, we would study Earth rocks the exact same way as we would with the space rocks. So I do have a good background on studying Earth rocks. So I just transfer that over to space rocks. So compositionally, they are very, very similar to Earth rocks. A lot of silicates, a lot of olivine, plagiclase, these are minerals that we have here right on Earth, which is great. What's different a lot of times is the shock. So when they are launched off the surface of the body or were ripped apart from the beginning of a planetesimal that doesn't exist anymore, there's usually some high pressures, high temperatures that were forming that affected some of the minerals. So sometimes they turn into glass because they, such a high pressure, high temperature, and then they recrystallize right away and they don't have enough time to organize all their atoms back together. So it turns into a glass, and that tells me something about what's happened to that rock. So if I'm talking to kids, I'll be like, I'm like a rock detective, right? Like I can look at the rocks, and I've been to school for a really long time and give them all these tools that I can read that story that the rock wants to tell us. So I kind of simplify that down to how I would talk to a kid, but that's what I do. That's my kind of study. So you give me a rock from space, rock from Earth, whatever, I would use the same investigative tools that I have and tell you all about it. So it's fun. I love getting people excited about that because I think every rock has a story to tell, and certainly space rocks have, I think, even a bigger story to tell because we only have so few of them, right? So.
Question about asteroid composition structure.
Yep.
Lately, we've been seeing asteroids that don't look anything like the moon.
Yep.
Lunar Regula, really, really fine, whatever. Now we're seeing like Hayabusa, asteroids that are just big gravel pits in
Piles.
space and whatever. And why aren't asteroid surfaces similar to the moon, given bombardment over billions of years, kind of?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not a physicist or astrophysicist at all, so I'm going to preface this as people watch it online or like, actually, this is very wrong. So I I'm not an astrophysicist. Yeah, why are the surfaces different? One would be composition. So, the moon and Mars and most sort of terrestrial bodies that are out there. Let's use Mars as an example because it's I called it our sister planet once, so I got really in trouble. It's our brother planet, so I want to make sure I say that properly. Our brother planet, it's big enough that it has differentiation. So, it has an iron core, silicate outside, just like our planet, and is a lot more competent, more hard. And then it does have an atmosphere, right? So it's not going to get bombarded in the same way. Whereas asteroids obviously have a very.
Right.
Didn't you tell people to turn off? It's stuck in there. The Oilers calling?
Yeah, yeah. I'm in there starting lineup.
Yeah, exactly. They need your help, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, composition, with Ryugu and with Bennu, composition is completely different, right? It's carbon rich, has not differentiated, so it doesn't have the ability to be able to cool the iron in the center because it's not big enough. It doesn't have enough gravity, no protective atmosphere whatsoever. So I think we'll see weirder and weirder things as we probe. And like we didn't even know what the surface of Bennu was going to look like. We had, this potato shaped looking picture of it up until the time that we got there, right? So I think every time we set up a mission like this and explore, I think we're going to learn more and more about our solar system. And I don't know if you guys know Sarah Siegler. I fangirl over that girl. She's so cool. She did a presentation at GSA about exoplanets and what they're finding, and it's just planet of diamond. Okay, well, sure, why not? So
She's our honorary president.
Reason why Bennu and Regu could be like what we found out with the DART is when it hit the thing, it just mixed everything up. It was just
Yep.
like it was going into a pillow
Yep.
of mixed up, and it just
mixes
it
it all up again.
and
Yep.
then it settles down
Yep.
again in whatever form it gets. So it
Yep.
doesn't have enough
Gravity.
to
Yep.
differentiate and give you that fine stuff that settles last, like it does.
That's surface. Yeah.
An assimilation type
Yep.
process.
You never get mold.
Yeah, I mean, when Sam landed on, when it touched the surface, it was like, talk about like a ball pit, right? Like it wasn't even a surface, it was just kept going. So it was like, whoa, sponge, yeah,
Makes it a
literally,
little tougher to deflect.
Yeah.
yes, it does.
Sort of blow it up.
Yeah.
So maybe carbon, what it is, because, the only stuff I see that black
Mhm.
is fresh basalt. And is that what most of the carbon is in the olivine and plagioclase and hornblende, or is it some of it in actual graphite?
There is graphite, there is some space diamonds, a lot of it's free carbon. So those nanoglobules, those balls that we're seeing are just straight carbon.
Just
Monatomic carbon. So we've studied Tagish, and we could see all different types of carbon forms that are not in a mineral structure otherwise. Tarta, Bennu, all these materials are a lot of serpentine minerals. So I think 70% serpentine. I have a mineral composition slide. I was not going to show this group, but it's saponite, serpentine, free carbon, that type of thing. So it's not really silicates.
Could be a good source for lithium.
Absolutely, yeah. Go critical minerals. So
Tell you on.
yeah. Doug Ford. Yeah.
I saw a moon rock in Golden, Colorado in their mining museum.
Okay.
University. Do we have a moon rock in Canada on display?
We do, absolutely.
Have you ever worked with one?
Oh, yeah. So my second purchase at the ROM was NWA 3163, which is a North Acidic meteorite from the moon, and it's 1.98 kilograms. So we have that one. And we have, I think, how many now? We're up to, I'm not as up on my moon numbers because it keeps changing because David keeps bringing, you know, the Gregory family keeps bringing in stuff, but we're in the 15 to 20 range of moon rocks at the ROM. So we do have quite a lot. What's really cool about lunar meteorites comparatively to Apollo, Apollo's samples are very cool, and we're still learning, even 50 years later after the samples have come back, we're still learning. I had a Nature Communications paper, I think, on Apollo samples. So, I mean, we're still learning all sorts of things, but it's really cool about moon meteorites. What time is it? It's 9:30. I'm getting tired.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't stay up this late very often. I apologize. My brain's starting to get tired, but the samples from the moon, what's great is a sampling of all the moon, right? So when they went to the Apollo landing spots, they went to like the flat, easy spots to land on, which wound up being the Mare. It was the same young rock that they wound up sampling. The North Acidic rock that I bought is from the Highlands, so they never sampled that through Apollo. So we have the unique opportunity to study a different part of the moon that hasn't been brought back by Apollo. So. Anybody else? You haven't asked the question, so we'll go over here.
You were saying that meteorites are made of pretty much the same stuff as Earth rocks, but have there been meteorites found that have stuff that is not on Earth?
Unobtainium, for instance?
Yeah.
Well, shit.
Yeah. Not on, so I mean, there's high pressure phases, so those aren't found on Earth because we don't have the ability. So like, for example, there's a phosphate called Tait that's in Mars rocks that isn't found on Earth because we don't have the pressure and temperature regime that can actually to form that mineral. So in that way, yes, but it was probably a mineral that does form on Earth, but just was put in the phase diagram is put in a different spot. So it converted. So yes.
So who do you buy moon rocks from?
Who do I buy moon rocks from? From very reputable meteorite specialists. So yeah, just meteorite dealers. You can find them on the internet. If you Google Springwater Palisite and ROM, a MSNBC article will come up about how I bought it from Michael Farmer. So that is public knowledge. I did not pay what he says in that article for it, just for the record. It was not that price. And I don't know where they got that number from, but it was not that much. But yeah, so we buy from people that are in the business. People try to sell me things daily in the gem world, in the mineral world, in the meteorite world. Have anybody ever been to the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show before? You know of it. Okay. So it's if you go to Tucson in February, which is not a bad deal, every hotel is taken over by dealers for fossils, for minerals, meteorites, gemstones, rocks, spheres of gems, healing gems, like everything to do with minerals and earth sciences. And people, know who I am and are like following me behind me, like, come to my car, I got something in the trunk to show you. I'm like, no, this is getting a little weird. So no, yeah, we're approached quite a lot. So
Randy's suggesting perhaps we should end it. We're getting tired.
no, I'm fine. I'm fine.
He's only suggesting that because he knows I have a question that I want to ask.
Oh, no,
And
that's why.
He wants to end it first.
No, let's let you have your question. So go ahead.
Well, you've been mean to me, so I'm gonna bring this up.
Go for it.
Oh, yes, you have. Very, very mean. You had a picture of a meteor that you have in your collection, which I think was tagged.
Okay.
That you mentioned, it's probably heavier right now because it absorbs the humidity.
Yeah.
And is that because you store it so poorly and that's why you didn't get to store the samples from Bennu? Because you shouldn't be exposing it to Earth normal atmospheres.
That is true.
Yes,
That's true.
I'm assuming that's just for display then?
That's for display.
Okay.
So we did make the decision. It was before my time. I did not make this decision, for the record. It was decided that it's called T2. It's the biggest chunk that was unfrozen. So it was brought to atmospheric temperatures to go on public display. So all the general public can see it. So it is the largest piece on display in the world. The rest of the material that we have is in it's in a freezer at -85, and it remains there. So it's completely frozen still. It's the only meteorite that's ever been recovered frozen and brought frozen. Stay frozen.
I have three short, easy questions.
Okay.
Okay, first one, so you showed Dante's Euphoria.
Yes.
Was there any remote possibility that you open it up and there's absolutely nothing in there?
I don't think so. So when they did the tag stem touch and came back, what they did is a spin maneuver
Right. I
to,
remember
yeah,
reading about
to measure the
that.
weight.
But I thought the error bars were really big on.
Air bars are very big, so I guess there is a possibility, but it was so small and they had 2 more times to go back if they wanted to, so they could have gone, but it creates more risk and et cetera. So they were comfortable enough with the weight spin maneuver that there was material. How much material, they weren't sure, but when you could see all that black stuff on it, he was
Right.
quite convinced there was enough there to,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
What?
Okay, so we get 4%, the other 96%, anything going anywhere interesting or is it all just getting?
So another, so the 1% goes to Japan, so to JAXA for their contributions. And then there was a switch between Hayabusa and Bennu samples. And then the rest of it, what is it, 25% is going to, is it 25%? Some portion of it is going to White Sands, going to, yeah, and then staying sealed. And so like what they did with Apollo with their cores, they're just opening them 50 years later. So that's the idea, is to preserve some of it for future people. So that's super cool. And then, yeah, there's a call out right now for people to apply for. So some of the material is open up now to the general community. That closes June 25th. So 4 days from now. So get your proposals in. So yeah.
Okay, last easy one. So there are 2 other samples. I understand they're much smaller and both Japanese missions, the other 2?
Mhm.
Okay, anything, like where are they in research? Anything exciting that's come out of those?
I've read lots of papers from the 2 missions, so Hayabusa 1 and Hayabusa 2, or just Hayabusa and Hayabusa 2. Yeah, I mean, I think everything is super exciting, so that's a little subjective of what's exciting, but yeah, there's all sorts of interesting studies about where it came from, what composition, etc. So keep posted, because I still think there's going to be, it's only couple years now, right? So I still think there's a lot to do. You can go on the website, on JAXA's website, and actually see every particle. They're so precise with their photographs and spectral measurements and stuff. So you can actually go and look at all of the samples online. It's pretty cool. So I think stay tuned.
Earlier in the talk, we spoke about the time you have the 65 media there to show the
Mhm.
cracking open of the
Yep.
meteorite. So at that moment, when you go, ta-da, what can you see that
Sure.
you can tell about what does it mean about the meteorite that's visible at that point?
So that one is a particularly pretty meteorite. It's called a palisite. So it's half metal and then it's half silicate, mostly olivine, so peridot, August burst stones. So it's these green gemstones that are in this iron matrix. So it's a really pretty rock. So we kind of knew that it would be something, instead of just showing, look at this black rock, see, look at that. So we actually, purposely put that one out there for seeing. And it's a big rock. It's 53 kilograms sample. And it was recovered in Saskatchewan in Farmers Field. It was a fall that people saw, so we knew about it. They collected some of the material very early on. There's no meteorite people in Canada to study it, so they wound up sending it abroad. So they sent most of it to Chicago to be studied. They realized it was a palisite, said cool, and then they went and sold it all over the world except to Canada. So that sucked. So we did get a little bit material back, but we only had a small piece. And so it was Michael Farmer who went up there. And so we knew that there was probably more material in the region. So he took an ATV with magnets in the back and just drove around and around and around and found all sorts of farming equipment and yes, hose and pieces of combines and all sorts of stuff, but they found out this 53 kilogram piece. And now with our new laws in Canada, you can't just take it away. So he called me because he knew that I would stop it at the border and said that it should come to the ROM. So we worked with him, and CPERP actually gave us half of the money for it. So the Canadian government says that this is cultural significance and we should keep it here. So here's half of the price, and then ROM was able to pay for the other half. So we bought it and got some space people or some press out of it, which is great, and get people talking about space. So yeah.
The question there actually, Don's question.
You're favoring him. There's some back there. So. From the spring water. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where spring water is, but it's usually most of the meteorites, if they're found in they're from a town, they'll call it whatever town it was from. So, okay.
Okay, so I haven't been to the ROM in many years.
Well, let's fix that.
I should
So,
go to the ROM,
yes, you should.
especially if we have something to see like that.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if maybe we can arrange for some like a group
Mhm.
tour or something, and including maybe a private back.
We can work on that for sure.
How do we just contact yourself?
Yep.
Okay, terrific.
You're talking to the right
Anybody
person.
else
So.
interested?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well,
We'll all individually email you.
Yeah.